Hello and welcome to the Beginner's Handbook. I'm Jordan.
I'm Jamie.
And in this episode we're going to be talking about close calls in, well, D&D, but also other tabletop RPGs as well.
Yeah, so hopefully you've had some kind of interesting close calls that haven't resulted in disaster. We've had a couple, so rather than what we've kind of normally do, which is give your kind of take on, whatever situation or topic that we've got, this time around we're just gonna share a couple of stories where we've had some close calls, and hopefully you might find that interesting. And if you don't, then stick it as a like or whatever, so we don't get sad.
Yeah, pretty much. Just if you don't like it, just leave it running until the end and leave it when you go to make dinner. That'll do. That's perfect for us. So yeah, that's what today's episode is going to be about. So yeah, really our question this time around, like Jamie's already talking about, is have you had a story that your character's had a close call in as a player or as a GM? Have you actually had stories where you as a GM has had an almost game-breaking thing happen at your close call, or your players, you've maybe threw something at them that's gave them a very intense set of events that could have altered the whole thing that was going to happen to them, whether it be story or player character death? I'd just like to hear it, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So as usual, you can rattle them in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you are listening elsewhere in the world of the digital metaverse. That's the new term. So if you're anywhere out there as well, then there's different social media options. There's Facebook, there's Discord, there's Twitter as well if you want to tweet something in, and Instagram as well if you want to be different. So if you've want to share your close calls, then get in touch.
Yeah, sounds good then. So I think we'll just start just to kind of, most people already know what a close call is, especially if you play these sort of games. But what is a close call for us, do you think?
Getting to the point where disaster is about to happen and then almost magically managing to completely avoid it. That's pretty much how I would sum up a close call. But yeah, getting to a point where things are gonna become negative and then managing to resolve it and getting something positive from the situation.
Yeah, totally. I'll maybe even have some examples actually today. It's not technically a close call because I've actually died or whatever, but it'll maybe be a close call for a different reason, but I'll maybe go into that at a later point. So, but why don't we just kick off with close calls that we've had then, like as players, let's say, and jump between a few stories?
Yeah, so one that jumps out for me that kind of involved me personally, which looking back on it became a foreshadowing for different events further down the line, but again, that's different stories for different occasions, or maybe you've already heard the story in another episode, but it's getting kind of sidetracked. So in our current campaign that we're playing just now, which is our long form campaign, which is, again, if you've watched other episodes or listened to other episodes, you'll have heard us talking about it as the dwarf campaign or some kind of variation of that. So we've got our regular characters in it, and what our DM introduced to that world, that campaign, was the concept of retainers. So in other words, if your character who has some form of official responsibility within the camp has to go and do something on official camp business, but you're still a player, you're still at the table, but the rest of the party is going to do something completely different. So rather than, some disasters happen, there's a lack of water, so they're having to stay and try and organise and keep people calm because they're panicking, or whatever the situation is. Well, rather than you having to stay with that character and do the kind of administrative tasks, you've got this other player that you can pull off the back burner, use them, do different bits and pieces with them, and then pick up with your character at whatever point. So that concept had been introduced, and we'd used it sparingly here and there up until this point in the campaign. So at this point we're maybe about the year mark.
Probably, but see, actually as well, the whole thing about retainers and that whole thing, the basis for that game is based on, it says strongholds and followers as well, in case anyone's interested and likes the sound of the idea.
And if they want to follow it up,
about a year in.
So give or take. So at this point again, we had used it but sparingly, and it literally just been maybe half an hour's worth of gameplay where you were doing that, and most of the time that we'd used the retainers, it was actually for the kind of opposite reason of what I was saying there. So we were using the retainers to do some kind of background administrative task to kind of, as we were progressing through the game, to kind of remind us that they were still there, but also to kind of slowly get ourselves used to balancing between the two characters and different little bits and pieces. But again, by the time we get to the year mark, what happens in this case, in this situation, which you'll probably remember, is our 3 main characters, they get pulled in to doing one quest, and then the 3 retainers get pulled into doing a sort of side quest, a different quest to do. So that was all fine, that was okay. So we played through our main characters and everything got all resolved, that was fine. And then it was time to go on to the retainers. So in the area where we were at that time, so it was a desert, so that threw up a kind of game mechanic that the DM used, which is, because you're in a desert, if you are walking about in full plate armour, you are going to slowly cook. So you were getting points of exhaustion, you were getting disadvantage in different checks, and different other wee bits and pieces to kind of to throw a curveball, to put a challenge in, which was fine, which was great. So we're all working around that and we're all figuring out what we were doing.
It was great for me with unarmoured defence. Didn't have any armour on, just who cares? Walking about the desert with no care in the world, where you were sweating buckets and emptying your boots. Yeah,
basically, yeah. So so that was with my main character, and with this retainer that I was playing as well. It was it was the exact same thing. They were both reliant on armour, so I was challenged. That's the polite way of putting it, I think. So we're working through the desert, and for the retainers we had a guide because we were properly going into the desert. So rather than being in this kind of sort of camp that was on the desert come city, and outside of the city there was kind of tents and there was more poverty, whereas inside the city there was proper buildings and there was more affluence. So we were out with that completely, and we were marching properly into the desert. So we had a guide who was navigating and taking us through, and then the 3 retainers. So for kind of context for anybody who's kind of wondering the sort of skill level of the characters, so all the retainers I think at this point were level 3, I think.
It was something like that.
Yeah. Our main characters at this point were level 6, I think. Can't quite remember, but level 6, there or thereabouts. And the guide that was taking us through was kind of level 4 or 5, so just enough that they had that extra bit of experience over our characters, and should we get into trouble would help us out. Again, a bit of foreshadowing going on there. So we're marching through the desert, and then lo and behold, on a trek through the desert, trying to get to where we're supposed to go, a group of figures appear over a dune, and we go, oh right, okay, this
must be friendly,
bumping into somebody out here. So we're all trekking along, and then they get a bit closer, and then I can't remember how combat appears, but
I think, was there not people hiding in the sand or something? I thought there was a trap or something. I might be mixing that up.
Yeah, there was. We then get to a point where the trap gets triggered and people start appearing out of the sand. That was it. So it then becomes, from the player point of view, so from my point of view, so I'm playing a character that I'm not that familiar with, and we've just been sprung with an ambush, so you're kind of flicking through notes and materials, and you try to figure out what you can do, what you can't do, and other bits and pieces, and everybody else is in the same boat. So we kind of deal with that initial ambush, but at the same point the figures are still coming over the hill. We managed to deal with the initial ambush, but then by this point it's clear that the people coming over the hill aren't friendly. So we ended up in a line and split, because I think tactically we were going, we'll only leave one set of prints, thinking ahead but kind of overthinking it, which then meant when the trap gets sprung, we were basically in 3 isolated pockets and our guide up the front.
I forgot about that.
Now the guide, who was getting played by the DM from memory, get hit pretty hard, and the DM heroically decided to make him, carry on through the desert, leaving the 3 of us once he'd get rid of the people that were attacking him, which then meant that my other 2 comrades, brothers in arms, once they get rid of their part of the ambush, they also heroically ploughed on. So it meant that by the time I'd finished with my part of the ambush, because I was the furthest back, it then meant I was kind of isolated at the back. So we're all trying to make progress and get away to a point of safety, and the figures that were coming over the hill are now getting closer and closer and closer to me, and it's clear that no matter how hard I try, how much progress I'm going to try and make, I'm not going to make it. Whilst everybody is heroically retreating and leaving me for dead.
It's called the tactical retreating.
Yeah,
that's why.
That's what it's called. Yeah, you're going to set up Overwatch. Yeah, that's what you were going to do.
Yeah,
despite none of these having the ranged weapons. But
anyway, we'll have the tent ready when you get over here.
Yeah, we've got the leeches. Don't worry. So that's what's happening. I'm seeing everybody close in, and I'm going, right, I'm going to need to try and fight my way out of this. I'm probably going to need to take an attack of opportunity, and I'm just going to need to try and suck up the damage here and just try and deal with it. I'm flicking through and I'm flicking through different stuff, and I'm thinking, and I'm in a bit of a panic. I'm going, right, what can I do? And I'm running through everything. Now, the retainer was a cleric, and it was a Tempest cleric as well, so I'm flicking through and I'm flicking through and I can't find anything, and I'm still trying to make as much progress as I can, even though I've been abandoned, because if I do eventually catch up with everybody, then they're going to be forced to join in this fight and maybe even the numbers a little bit. So they eventually end up encircling me, and I'm literally surrounded. But just as this happens, as I'm going through the spells that the cleric's got, I spot one, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Thunderwave, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember it.
I seen Thunderwave and I read it, and I went, oh good, this is, I can't remember what it is, like a 15-foot cube, I think.
I think it's an area of effect, unless it's Thunderstep, but basically some area of an effect.
Yeah, so it's a decent enough area, but it's not ridiculously big. But I look at the map and the way everybody's set up, and I kind of roughly work it out, and I go, oh right, okay, if I do this, then I can hit every single person here apart from this one enemy whose token appears to be different from the 6 other guys that are there. Maybe indicates that he's slightly more powerful. Anyway,
or slightly weaker than the rest, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So I then went, right, okay, that's what we'll do. So it's as they're circling in, I realise this, so I still make progress and I don't attack to try and draw them in as tight as I possibly can, and I'm desperately hoping that this other guy on the outside is going to close the distance. And I don't know if the DM was a bit suspicious at this point, because he stayed where he was, but everybody else continued to close in, so he wasn't that suspicious. And then release the spell, take everybody out of the game, apart from the guy on the edge, and I'm like, yes, really, really lucky with the hits that I got. There was maybe 1 or 2 people that survived, but I took like between 4 and 6 people out the one move.
And one go.
Bang, done.
Yeah, that was cool. I was sure you were dead as well, and then you're like, that's boom! They're all dead.
Yeah, and then I went, right, okay, still not quite out of the woods yet because I've still got 3 people. But the other 2 guys that were there took a massive amount of damage anyway, and then it was like 1 or 2 hits and the 2 of them dropped, and then it was just this one guy that was left, and then managed to go toe to toe and survive the fight. So, I mean, in terms of close calls, that's probably one of the closest that I've ever had to go through. And the other thing that happened with that, which I did not think, and you need to remember that your actions have consequences, is so we were going through the desert, but we're all going through the desert on a camel, 1 camel each. And when I done the thunder wave, I got told from the DM, right, okay, that's okay, you've done that, you've taken out those guys, but you've also taken out your camel. It can't sustain that because it's going out in 3 dimensions, which I didn't think about, so I accidentally took out my own camel as well. So
yeah, I remember that, because we were like, oh, that was awesome, and it's like, oh yeah, your camel's legs is broken and it's dead, and we were like, oh crap.
I know, that was the thing. I felt kind of sorry for the imaginary camel, but at the same point,
it's rations at the end of the day.
yeah, us being us, like, always look on the bright side. If one of your comrades dies, then hey, free money. If your camel dies, then you've got camel burgers for dinner. Happy days.
I know, I do. It's funny, I actually was getting mixed up with another story at one point when you were starting to tell it, but once you started talking about the desert, I do remember it.
Yeah.
I just remember going, I think actually for me, I went away from that game with that fight. I'm sure I was single digits at one, because I'm sure all of us had at least 3 or 4 plus people on us, so that means, I can't remember if the DM done it or not, but I think that would probably mean most attacks had advantage and stuff. I don't know. I know in terms of flanking they should have, but whether or not he'd done that, we're not sure, because he might have been doing it privately.
Yeah,
but it was pretty tough.
Try to remember what, year and a half ago or something. Yeah,
I think also retainers work a wee bit different. It's not, I think they have a very limited pool of spells, but I totally get why. But so it was basically, we were quite unfamiliar with these characters as well.
Yeah. We done it slightly different. So rather than the proper retainer rules for that, we did kind of role characters to be used as retainers, but they had a bit more kind of behind them.
Yeah.
Whereas our proper retainers were using the proper retainer rules.
Oh, that's right. These were like extra characters. These were
retainers.
Yeah, these were almost like proper backup characters as opposed to like retainers being backups.
Yeah.
So I think, unless I'm remembering wrong, the retainers could become, although we've never used it, I always had the impression that when we died the retainers would be upgraded to full characters.
Yeah, that's
never done that
that's
anyway.
What I thought as well, but
maybe not, I can't mind.
Not done that.
So I always wanted to go a warlock guy. I've never really played it. My first character might have been a warlock or a bard, but I didn't know how to play either, so whatever one was first, I didn't know what I was doing. So I'd quite like to try a warlock again, like having it properly customised and know what I'm doing for a change.
I think it was bard then warlock, if I'm remembering properly.
That may be right, so that was the very first one. But actually this is a one I wasn't actually going to bring up, but I just remembered it in terms of one of the close calls for me. It wasn't quite so much death. I'm pretty sure this is more a wee story thing that happened, but it was that first game actually that we ever played back in 2019 or earlier, whenever it was we started playing D&D. And
it was way before that, remember?
It was 2017, I think.
Aye, at least.
Yeah, at least. Aye, that's right. And it must have been the bard I was playing, because I got to do what bards do best. Well, I think we all get some form of fantasy aids, if I remember. Oh, the Red Plague, that's what we got, because we started the barber roll. I think that was like the natural first steps that we didn't mean to do, but it happened. And then I think I went and romanced some herbalist and got a potion or something. I don't think DM was happy with it, but I was going, this is what bards do. And everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. But there was a point in that where I think either a group of us or one of the characters, might have been, I can't remember which character it was. But anyway, there was a town of folk chasing after them. That's what it was. They gave a false name. the chameleon gave a false name,
He did.
and then he came up and then he blurted out the wrong name, and Andrew,
the real name.
Yeah, he picked up from it, and it was like everyone went,
Yes.
wait a minute.
Yeah. So the DM at that point took, and again to be fair, it was the natural step that the townspeople then went, hang on, we've been lied to, and it turned into a mob.
I think all of us actually went, oh. Wait a minute, I think we all picked up, it was something dead funny and good for the DM for picking up on it, because, I mean, we did pick up on it, but it's one of these things that could have so easily just went, can it get missed? Because I'm sure the guy did good, like, doing his persuasions and like, actually getting them on side until that point.
Basically, everything went well, and as far as I can remember, he passed everything, but at the crucial point where you're supposed to say the fake name, the real name came out, and then it was like, well, it doesn't matter whether you've passed it, you've just literally told them that you've lied to them. So sorry. There
was some history as well. I think we'd done something that upset folk, and then this was a separate group or something, and that, so basically it was his fake name that was saving the guy at that point. Anyway, it gets sussed out. And anyway, it was going to be pretty bad for him. I'd pulled out that whole thing
literally running through the town with the mob chasing them. Yep.
I feel like I was coming back. I might have the order of events wrong, but I think I was coming back from the herbalist's tent, and I think I seen this.
Proper house, remember?
Oh, was it? Oh, was it a proper house?
Because we're in like a proper town.
Oh, that's right.
You're going an automatic dwarf game now.
That's probably what it is. Yeah. And I remember doing some illusion, like thaumaturgy type thing where you make your voice boom, and I made it sound like some elder god was shouting at the thick townspeople, something to that effect. But it totally worked. Like I was not expecting that, and it ended up totally working. So that was just a wee close call. I suppose it would be for him if they got up. Now whether or not the DM would have actually kicked the crap out of his character and potentially killed him, I wouldn't put it past our DM because he's fair. If that was to happen, he would let it happen. But I don't think, I'm not sure if he would have done it on our first game, but it was a close call for him because he did end up getting away as a result of it, and I think I skulked away at the back and got away or skulked out.
Yeah, and again, that he only survived because of you just pulling that out the bag and going, last throw of the dice, may as well have a go, may as well see if it works. And as it turns out, that town was a God-fearing town, and they were very scared of you. So happy days. I know, and that was my first game. I was expecting a level up. I think after one successful check, I was like, "Give me a level up! Come on!" It's like that's not how it works. And I went, "No, okay, fine. I'll play Cthulhu next week." But I defeated 40 people in this town and saved one person.
They're all worth half an XP or something. But I know it's funny. It's funny going back to that. I couldn't have remembered that if you'd asked me, but it wasn't until you were talking about some of that stuff there that just brought it up.
Oh, it's funny because literally I'd forgotten about it as well until you started talking about it, and I went, "Oh God, yeah, that's right."
Aye.
But it was a kind of bizarre one as well because when he was working through his checks to try and convince them that he was somebody else,
and he did a really good job. Everything was aced except that one bad crucial moment.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Every single check nailed.
Yeah,
and they were all good rolls, but the actual player RP point was the thing that let him down. But when you think about it, you go, well, it's a first proper game, and try to remember names as well as how you use spells as well as class abilities, so you've got a lot of stuff going on that you're juggling, and because of that you just automatically go for the character name rather than your character's new alias.
Because you're still trying to figure out doing your character. I mean, it's not even like first time players, even if you played a lot it can feel a bit like that. Because that was certainly something. I mean, I wouldn't have put it past the DM either to like let us get away with it, and like the guy could have went, "Oh, I didn't mean to say that name," and the DM might have been like hand waved it. Okay, didn't say that name, but I'm glad that they were all game for just
mob justice.
Yeah, I know it was good. It was dead funny. That kind of leads me on to something then. So it's just because it's going back to a game that I'd ran. Actually, I'm just going to jump to something else. Just because it's a bit closer to close calls. there was one that I'd done recently. I was playing the Curse of Strahd for a bunch of players we've been playing for ages now, and man, I love that campaign. It's so good, honestly. I just enjoy. It's all gothic horror. For those who don't know, what rock are you living under? But actually, though, it's so good. Every kind of, Eastern European type folklore, it's crammed into this one game, and you're never going to get through all the content through one sitting, but with Curse of Strahd anyway, we were doing it when we were fighting the infamous Baba Lysaga, which is based off of Baba Yaga in actual folklore. So it's just one of these things where we were doing it, and it was good. I think if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I'm not somebody that enjoys full night combat. So just you can make it good, but I just find, especially when people get tired, it's not even so much about it being just one thing you do all night. It's just when you get tired, it does, especially if, when I'm running games and it's like 2 a.m, I can't keep combat interesting at that point, But this game was particularly interesting and difficult because one of the things that we have is they were fighting Baba Yaga, and they actually ended up kicking the crap out of her at one point, and it was looking good. But she's beefy. For those of you who know the campaign, man, she ain't something to be trifled with, and I think she's probably more difficult, I think, than anything else that they've faced up to that point. And I think they were level 7 at this point, and they'd fought Strahd as well, but I think they'd fought him maybe early on, and he was playing with them a bit. But so I think the other thing for that was the house then got involved, and man, it was awesome when the house came up. Everyone's like, what the hell? Now, they'd actually kind of sussed it was Baba Yaga. I think I had the name slip, if I remember right. But anyway, to their credit, they played it as if they didn't know. And the house started moving and then chucking rocks at them, and man, it was close. I'm speaking about every player was down to single digits. The cleric was pulling it right out of the bag. Like, she's done great playing this cleric, and like every single time something bad was happening, she was sacrificing potentially game-changing stuff to try and revive folk, because it's like, if they go down, they're not going to get up to them in time. Like, they're not going, unless they do their death saves and succeed. These guys are dead, so they managed to keep on the cusp. That whole, I think the last hour and a half of that game was literally down to single-digit hit points, even for my characters, who I managed to, I'd done this big spell on them, it was this big illusion, and they totally fell for it, man. And my guy snuck away with 2 hit points or something like that. I think it was exactly 2 hit points, and it was so everyone involved was so close. But I know they had a close call in terms of actually beating this thing, because they were like, we need to leave, we've got no hit points and we've got no spell slots and blah blah blah. And they're like, one of the other players was like, yeah, but we've done all this for nothing, so like, what we're going to do, we need to go and kill her. And the others like, no, let's just go. And they were this big, should we not sort of thing. And by the end of the game, I said to them, like, they were leaving, and I said, well, pick it up from when you're about to leave in case they change their mind. But anyway, they ultimately did not change their mind and left with, and this woman with 2 hit points that would have been a lot of XP they would have got. But it was close. It was close because of one, they almost achieved this massive goal in the game that they turned away from. Not, totally understood why they thought it would be best not to. One of them even dispelled the hut, right? It was about to kill someone, I'm sure, and it dispelled the magic hut, and it like crumbled, and it was wild. Just they came up with all the right solutions. But they all walked away limping, even on their travel back. I've not seen them that scared on basic travelling through a game, because they know every 30 minutes in game they need to do a check.
Can happen,
so I'm doing the secret rolls, and they're lucky they didn't, I think they hit one thing on the way back, and it was something insignificant like a gravestone or something. So it ended up being great, and it was a shame because we were so close to killing her. But even the way back, they were just totally gritting their teeth through the whole journey, and then they got back and they got their long rest and they got their level up and stuff. But that was a great game. It was tense for everyone, because I was like, I was kind of wanting someone to, not even if it wasn't die, I wanted at least someone to go down, and I was so close. So I was like going, this one needs to go and then this one needs to be next, because I know that this person's healing them all. But it was a great game overall.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Also, do they know now how close they came, or do they still not know?
I'm not telling them. I'm not telling them. I just said that was a close game, wink. But they were like, of course it was, we were all down to single digits, I think, except the cleric who healed herself. But the rest of them were just like, I was so close. I had 2 spell slots. I had no key points left. I think my brother had 8 hit points max. I think that was the highest out of the 2 that were actually right up and getting a lot of punishment.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was the first time they had proper wizard battles as well. Counter spells, flying. It was total wild, and that's the first time the wizard in the party had ever he went, I'm going to shoot this thing at them, boom. And I was like, cool, pah, whack, counter spell. And he went, what?
You can do it.
And I said, you've spent your spell slot. And he went, but it didn't work. And I said, I know it didn't work. Bam, again. And he's like, what the hell's going on? So he's going to be picking that. I think he's picking up counter spell next time when he levels up. Well, they have, so he'll be picking it next. But man, it was a crazy
game.
game.
You'll never use a spellcaster ever again.
But do you know what though? What was great about that whole game was, as much as I hate long combats, I just don't enjoy running them that much, because of the way it just so happened to tier itself, where they fought that switch, and then later on when they were actually getting the edge, the house, she commanded the house to get up, so it added a whole new layer of threat. And if the house wasn't in it, they might have actually killed her. But the house was, I mean, it totally grappled the monk, who's the MVP in that group for close combat. The cleric does more damage and stuff generally, but the monk's the one going in and stunning folk and getting loads of attacks in and crowd controlling as best they can, and they do a good job at it as well. It's always great watching them kind of synergise. But he got hit real bad at the start as well. He was grappled and then he was crushed, and it was the whole thing, man. The whole sequence was just total traumatising, I think, for them, because that's the hardest thing they've ever fought. And I think it might be the highest spellcaster, full spellcaster I've actually fought or used against players, because that was a wild fight. It was totally wild, but it was so good, man. So close the whole way through it, so close.
Yeah. Well, another one that I can think of is, again, in our long campaign, the dwarf campaign. So this will be literally, I think, a 4th or 5th game in. And again, us thinking that we're doing the right thing tactically. Again, if you've listened to previous episodes or watched previous episodes, you know the main theme in that campaign is travel. So we've been displaced from our home, we're now gathering support, and then we're travelling back to our homeland to get it back, basically. So as we're going along, we're trying to pick up new people and people that want to join the cause and all that sort of a thing. So again, so this is 4th or 5th game in, roughly speaking. And what we decided at this point with our 3 characters, so myself, Jordan and the chameleon, we decide, right, Jordan's character is a barbarian, so he's a man who's lived in the wilderness most of his life. So what we'll do is we'll stop the camp here because we've got a lot of people and we're going to get them all rested up, and you go ahead for a couple hours and sort of see what the path ahead is, or maybe it was a bit longer than that because we knew that there should be another town, so you go ahead and kind of figure out what it's like. So then by the time we turn up, we know whether we're going to be welcome or not, and if we need to just kind of grab supplies and keep moving or whatever. So we're then split up at that point, so we've got Jordan off doing his own thing, and we've got me, myself and the chameleon. And then in game time, Jordan's character's gone for don't know, an hour at most or something. Everybody's settling down and things, and we're in this kind of a big ruin or cave. Can't quite remember.
Cave sort of. I think it was in a ruin or something.
A big cave with buildings and ruins and things in it. Which had been abandoned. And at no point did any of us go, I wonder why. So we went, this is clearly the best place to stay. So we got everybody in and we're doing that. And you'd had literally like, it was a case of, right, okay, so you're going to go ahead and do this. That's okay, that's fine, we'll come back to you in a minute, so we'll see what the rest of the camp's doing and then we'll get back to you. And then lo and behold, in the camp, an ankeg appeared. So for anybody who doesn't know what that is, big monster, burrows under the ground. So up it came, kind of had a wee go at fighting a couple of people, and then grabbed a kid from the camp and disappeared down into the burrow. So the way that the campaign's working as well is one of the three of us is essentially the camp leader, and then that's how we kind of get decisions and things made. So the person who's the camp leader is essentially the final say on the decisions, but obviously between the three of us we talk and we figure out what we're going to do. So my character sees the camp leader going, "Oh no," and jumping down after the wee girl and the ankeg. So he goes, "Right, I better jump in after him as well, because obviously numbers wise it's not great, and that's what the leader's doing and decided, and I'm a team player," so down he goes as well. When we then get down there, it's kind of different sort of chambers and different things through this burrow as it's discovered a kind of underground sort of temple ruin that it's burrowed into. So we're going and we're moving, and there's like sandy floor, and then there's kind of solid stone and concrete. So it's basically the floor is lava at this point. And if you're on the sand,
that's right. I forgot about that. There's that whole
exactly.
Different stuff happening.
Yeah. So if you're on the sand, it could just appear and grab you. And when we were on bits of the stone, there was kind of sort of cliff edges down the side of it that it could scuttle up and try and grab you and things as well. So there was only one bit that was kind of properly safe because it was stone, but it had kind of pillars and arches and things, which kind of so you were basically in a cage at that point. So myself and the chameleon were there, and we're in combat, and we're trying to deal with the ankeg, because between the two of us we kind of figured, right, if we do that, that's probably going to be the quickest way to then try and get the girl. But if we try and get the girl, then it's going to take one of us out of combat, which then means you're 50% down with the damage that you're doing, but also you're 100% up in the amount of hit points and damage that you're taking as well. So we went, okay, let's keep doing this, this is the best sort of solution to it. So that's going on, that's all going okay, and then like a particularly bad hit the chameleon takes, and like, okay, that's not great. Again, combat is going on another little bit, and then another while later, again another particularly bad hit the chameleon takes. I've been taking some damage at this point, but my character's got an ability that not any time when he takes damage, but it's a kind of unearthed arcana class where it's like psychic knight. So as a reaction, he can use one of his abilities to then reduce the damage down. So I'm still taking some damage, which is pretty hefty, but imagine I kind of shave it down by half maybe. So I'm kind of doing a bit better than the chameleon. But on and on and on this goes until eventually down goes the chameleon. Yeah. So it's just me, a KO'd chameleon, and a KO'd girl. I'm like, right, okay, what am I gonna do here? So again, I'm gonna try to take on the ankeg and try to kind of lure it away from them. But the ankeg disappears, and okay, where's it gonna reappear? So I'm trying to go over to the chameleon, but then the ankeg comes up and rattles him when he's on the ground, dead, gone. I'm like, oh well, that's going to be a hard one to explain when you get back up to the surface, if you get back up to the surface.
Yeah.
So again, still try to take on the ankeg, going, right, I must have done a decent bit of damage now. How hard can it be? So on and on this goes, but at this point I'm going, right, writing's on the wall, So I'm going to need to get myself over to the wee girl and then try and sort of, you know, engage in combat, and then when it disappears, because it's been kind of popping up, hitting, disappearing, popping up, hitting, disappearing, at that point, grab her, run as much as I can, then when it appears, drop her, engage with it, grab her, and do that. So I'm starting to do that, and it gets to the point where I take a decent bit of damage, and I'm kind of single digits for hit points at this point. So I go, right, okay, what am I going to do? And I go, right, that's the DM. I'm going to play dead. You know, I'm going to go full possum
Did
here.
you play dead in that?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I was twiddling my thumbs at this point because my character was out and had no indication.
In
So
the wilderness, sniffing flowers, looking
so
at butterflies.
I kind of observed this entire sequence because there was nothing really for me to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So this is maybe where your hatred of long combat comes from, because
I had it way before
literally, literally again, this is this game started kind of us, or sorry, the game before finished with us arriving at the cave in the ruins, and then this game started as, you know, going in, which then meant you then from that point, after a quick bit of talking, then left. So by this point, because the combat was taking a good while, this is like a couple of hours in or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, you're just sitting there. You've not been engaged with from. That's okay. We'll get back to you in a minute. That was essentially your involvement up until that point. So I play possum and go, right, okay, this is the only way that I can see getting out of this. If I play possum, let it come up and scuttle about, and then maybe it'll lose interest in us because we're not fighting back, we're not alive, it's done when it's done, whatever. And as well, I'm also heroically going, let's just leave the chameleon as bait. Is it goner anyway? You know, that's the other thing I was kind of thinking. So if I lay still, and as long as it's going over to him and not over to me, then if it grabs him and tries to take him away, then at that point I've got another chance to then escape. So I'm trying to think all these different sort of strategies at this point. But it comes up and it starts coming over to me, and I go, right, I can't lie here and take the damage.
Yeah,
I need to go. And from the character's point of view as well, he has a son, so he's going, right, okay, like for him, and this is why I was trying to think about his decision making as well. He's going, right, he's came down and he's tried to do the right thing, but if he stays here, he's definitely going to die, and the chameleon is already gone, but also the girl, who we've not actually managed to kind of get over to and try and check and see if she's okay, is a kid and has went through as much damage as this rough and tough leader. So in his head he's going, right, she's probably gone as well. So at this point it's about, you try to stay down here and fight the impossible odds just to say that you've been heroic, or do you retreat and get up and live to fight another day and still be there to look after your family and stuff. So at that point, and the way the map was kind of set up as well, big huge crevasse in the middle of it, bit of stone going round the edge of it and around the side, kind of peppered with pockets of sand. So he does a kind of full on sprint around and manages to get to the properly secure bit with the stone, with the kind of pillars and kind of arches around it. So manages to pass a couple of checks to get there, and then the last bit, I kind of sprint towards the tunnel and then up the tunnel, which again he just managed to get through. So he managed to get back up to the surface with about 3 hit points.
As low as that?
I was properly low.
I do remember it was, as someone who was observing like pretty much the entire sequence, the thing for me that I noticed, I think the bit that really perked up was, I think you were doing a sidestep or something, like there was an edge and
Yeah.
and I think that was one of the last things you might have been doing, but I remember it was quite palpable because I think the guy that had died, I remember he was like this, his face this far from his camera, and for people listening, I'm talking like 3 inches from his face, so it was total like, and I could see it, I could feel it, I was like, oh my god, he's gonna die, James is gonna die as well.
Yeah.
I mean, when my guy's like shoving, in my head he was shoving in his marshmallows into the fire and eating them.
Yeah, and that was the other thing that I actually kind of forgot about there until you mentioned it. Again, one of the bits, like where he decided to play possum ahead of him, little narrow ledge which was counting as difficult terrain, which was slowing the movement down, but it was the quickest route to get to the bit with the arches that I knew would be properly safe, or his best chance of keeping himself safe. Whereas the other way, no difficult terrain, quicker to get to the door, but at every single point along that journey could get attacked.
That's what it was.
So it was a gamble between slowing yourself down at the start with a longer journey to be safer, or taking the risk and just full on Usain Bolt to the door. So that's what he done. He went round the ledge and went for the safer option. Again, worked out okay. Managed to get up with about 3 hit points, but then Ankeg came back up again. But by this point, the entire camp was kind of ready and mobilised, and then managed to kind of take it down. But that was the end of the camp leader at that point, the chameleon. That was the start of his carousel of characters. Again, one small child from the camp missing, never to be seen again as well.
Yeah, I do. That's right. Yeah. I do remember. It was crazy because that was like the first time we'd had like character death like that. Do you know what I mean? So, and then I think the guy that had his crag, his camp leader, the crag, died. I think he quickly took up the second set of reins, but I think he lasted even less time. I might be mixing them up, but he didn't last that long because there was a whole griffin fight. We could do a whole episode and just close calls with this one game because there was a whole fight with griffins and stuff as well, which didn't work out in his favour.
And again, if nobody's puzzled out why we came up with the nickname the Chameleon, then that's why he's been through a lot of characters, so he's always got a different identity.
He's very good in all of them.
Yeah.
And I'm very good at was just one because I've never died. So.
Yeah, traitor. But
I had a close call in that game that I killed you as well, but I was the bad guy, so I suppose that doesn't count.
Well, I suppose it does, but
I was down to 1 round of combat. I think one attack could have done me in.
Aye, but you can't use it because you're using it to gloat. That's not the point of this episode.
It was awesome. That's what it was.
It's to spread joy, not sadness. But yeah, so that was another one that was really, really close. Yeah, and again, like Jordan was saying, the Chameleon's second character lasted even shorter than 4 or 5 games. I think he was like 2 or 3.
Was it as little as that? I can't. It's just been so long. It's hard to describe. I mean, this is potentially like over a year and a half ago we're speaking about. You know, so it's really hard to remember actually some of these details.
Oh no, that would be.
Is that longer?
Yeah, because it's literally like the 3rd or the 4th game or something. So this would
literally
be like 2 years.
Because I think
That's longer.
Yeah, because I think my guy's been leader for 2 years. No, that doesn't make sense.
No, that would be about right.
I think so.
Aye, because it was Chameleon U.
And then that's it. Aye.
Yeah, because the first character lasted so short, we both kind of didn't really want to take on the responsibility, and because he was a bit bummed out that he died.
He put a lot of work into the character.
We went, right, okay, well you're other character. Yeah, when you go be the leader again, it's fine. Doesn't kind of bother us either way.
Aye.
And then he lasted like again 2 or 3 games or whatever it was, and went, maybe it's best somebody else.
I think
somebody with a bit more longevity takes over.
Yeah, and I think that's when he decided to just stop taking notes for the D&D game. He was like, I've had enough of taking notes.
Every time I take notes, I die.
Yeah, that's funny. It's definitely something. I mean, I'm trying to think. There's an example I had. There's a couple. I'm just trying to think one that's maybe closer to that. So there's one that my guys. So speaking about these characters, one of the ones that I had happen to my guy was we had done. I'm trying to think. It was one of the last games we'd done, and we basically had this whole the big town. It took us about 2 years to get here. Well, longer I suppose, but it took us, let's say, about 2 years to get to this one location in the game. And then it was like it got raided by all these people, and it was so tough. Like the game, for those who don't know, my guy is a totem warrior of the bear, so notoriously impossible to kill. In short, resistant to everything except psychic damage. Doesn't mean they're weak to psychic damage. It's just they take normal damage from it,
which proportionately seems like a hell of a lot.
It does. The first time. When the rogue character died, before that, when he was attacked by the witches, they were doing psychic damage, and I just went, nah, not getting involved in that. I only took like 20 hit points at the time was quite a lot, but that in comparison to like that was total 20 or 25 or something, whereas you guys were, because you aren't resistant to stuff, was like 40. It was quite a big difference. So I was taking whatever the actual numbers were, I was about half of what they had taken, and I went, nah, I don't like this, let's go. And then that's when another character of our dear friend had died again. At least he wasn't the camp leader. No, he wasn't camp leader at that point. Anyway, so we'd just done this whole big siege of the city. It was happening, and literally every single flaming enemy had psychic damage. Everyone. It was like I couldn't do jack squat because of it, and literally the thing is I was getting through them and I had resources, but by the time we got to like the big boss fight, I was down to a couple, maybe 3. No, it must have been 2 rages or something, or I think it was maybe my last rage that I had available. And then weirdly everybody else up until this point has never been psychic damage really properly, but all these guys had psychic damage, and my guy was injured. He had 1 rage left, which I suppose wouldn't help, but at least I get extra damage on it, anyone that maybe wasn't doing psychic damage, at least I was protecting myself against them. That fight was totally wild, and it was like literally we were surrounded, and it was tough the whole way through it. It felt like we were, even if we didn't have like low hit points at that particular moment, we felt like this is bad, particularly because there was some portal that had opened with this thing coming out it. I can't remember that. Was that my game? Am I mixing it up? There was a guy in a portal coming out. There was a whole thing about a dragon or something coming out, the first dragon or first among dragons.
That was up in the roof, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was something like a portal was opening and we had to switch it off basically. And I basically, the thing is that was...
No, it was the masks. Wasn't the portal.
Well, there was a mask there too. That was with the werewolves and stuff. And it was a portal sequence because we needed the god people to shoot it or something. But then there was something coming out. There was a time restraint on it, and even if we had okay hit points at that moment, we're sitting going, every moment we don't do anything, we've got this serious threat coming through, and it was total wild. It was hard, but then on top of that, what was compounding it even worse for my guy, and I was like cold sweating it at one point, and it was like everyone's doing psychic damage, and I'm like, my guy's screwed. And then the DM threw something in that I've not seen before. I'm sure there's rule sets for it and there's games that use it, but I've just never personally seen it. And it was some spell that switched Jamie and I's character, and I was like, oh crap, this really changes things. And I was like, my guy's dead. Weirdly, I never felt like I was having a close call anymore, because I just was like, cool, whatever happens I'd kind of, my mind had shut it off, like whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But that whole thing, it just made it so cool. It was such a dynamic fight, that because normally, like, I think that was a long fight. I normally don't like them, but even that character switch, like, it was, if we were at the table, I think it was online, but if we were at the table, it would have been a case of you literally switch your character sheets, and we did the same thing but virtually. But it was awesome, man. That was so cool. I did enjoy that, although I was like, how come everyone's got psychic for all of a sudden, but it was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy, but other than that though, it was total. the whole thing just felt tense. But this is what's good about close calls, and you should definitely, don't be afraid of potentially knocking your characters out if you're running a game and you're nervous about it, because that's what makes you kind of grasp the table, and grip it, and maybe break your keyboard as you panically type stuff to each other. But it was good fun. You get any other examples? I know this is us talking about our stories, but if you've got any other little anecdotes you want to share, and I've got another one I would like to share as well, and I think that's me. Well, if you go first.
Go ahead with that. No, I think that's kind of...
You got everything?
I think so, without kind of sitting and kind of trying to remember back to something particularly else.
I'll maybe wrap up then. So moving it on from D&D, I'm going to move on over to Alien, because I've just ran it, and I'm going to run some more of it with you guys, and I can't wait for that. I really hope you enjoy it. And I've also been reading Mothership, which sounds, it's actually so much harder than Alien, which I didn't think was possible, but so in Alien I had a game, and oh god, the thing is with Alien, for those who are familiar with it, or even if you're familiar with Mothership, you get squishy characters. If you've played Call of Cthulhu, you get squishy characters. But I would say Alien and Mothership take it further than Call of Cthulhu does. And you know how squishy these characters can be, because you one-shot one of my guys. Now it was a critical hit, but even without the critical hit, it could have easily put me down, So even with that fragility, Alien takes it much further. And basically what really happened with him, it was bad. It's just so bad thinking about it. It was like one of the guys, I'm going to stop him. He was shouting and arguing with NPCs and all that crap, and then this alien appeared. No, maybe I won't go too much into it. I was going to explain it all, but not going to, because you will be playing it in the not too distant future. But although it was a different game, it doesn't really matter. So anyway, it was like this alien had come out, and aliens get more. I discovered after that game, because I thought I was doing it wrong, but I discovered I was doing it right. Aliens, basically the way it works in Alien is you can roll for it if you want, but you deal initiative cards, and the lower the better. So you get 1 to 10, and if you get a 1, you go first. That's super simple, and I quite like it. But with Aliens, they have more than one, and I won't tell you how much until you play it, and then you'll just go, oh, that's not good. But they get multiple rounds and multiple turns in one round. Like in D&D, you've got multi-attack, so you might have 2 attacks in a turn. Or in Pathfinder, you'll get 3 actions. Instead of compounding it into one set of movements and things, especially because Alien's so vicious, like the game system, it just gives it different turns. So in Pathfinder, like you get 3 actions, but Alien would break them up into 3 different initiative order turns. So anyway, it was like every single roll I was doing was like injuries, and it was all like every attack would inflict automatically an injury. I had out of a group of 6 players, 6 players, because I was the 7th player, well, I wasn't a player, I was a GM, but out of the 6 players, I had one that was attacked like 3 times, like within a couple of rounds. It was like 3 attacks on them. I'd rolled to see who was getting hit. I had 2 other players who were critically injured, not downed, but they were basically doing their death saves, and then the 4th one, so out 4 out of the 6 ended up being downed or injured, and then one of them eventually ended up dying from it. But it was total wild. Everybody was like, what the hell do we do? Thankfully, one of them ended up kind of sacrificing themselves, so to speak, so they ended up distracting the thing enough for them to all run. But out of 6 players, I had 4 of them who were literally rolling death saves as they're running away, and every turn, every 6 seconds in D&D parlance, it's like death save. And they were rolling amazing, like every check they were passing, which was amazing for them. But it was crazy, because I could have had a total TPK in 1 round of combat, and it was very, I mean 4 out of 6 players is a high percentage of your players, so it was pretty fun. But ultimately what that close encounter or close call had done was it changed for them. It was their newer, or most of their games are fantasy based, where you're quite robust. And even in Pathfinder, it's easier to die than D&D, but you're still not, compared to like Alien, you're pretty robust. So that was their first game where they went, oh my god, this is real. This is no joke. But no, I just thought I would share that one, because it was even worse than that game that you had, where people were dying, like our guy was dying and that wee girl had died and stuff. That was a lot of death. But that game, it was like, and I thought they wouldn't want to play it again, but no, they're still up for it, so
Yeah.
I'll be doing another one for them soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's really my kind of bits to share. So I think, anything to add? I think other than that, really, it's just, I would like to ask you guys, like, have you got anything you would like to share with us? We'd like to hear some of your anecdotes. Have you had any stories was there any close calls that actually went your way at the end? Did you manage to pull a fast one, either in the DM or the situation? We'd love just to certainly hear some of your thoughts on it, because for us this is more just about sharing some of our experiences instead of coming from a place of this is what we think's best. You know, it's nice to actually just sit and reflect about some of the good times in games and not all the bad ones, because most sort of the guidance that we might have is here's some great stuff and then here's the stuff that we've had that was rubbish. So this was a good way to kind of get a bit of catharsis or something more cathartic even out of it.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing as well, like going through like something like this, so rather than in this situation this happened and kind of analysing it to death, just going over whatever happened and just telling you what happened, what it was, and why you look back on it and you either have a laugh about it or you look back at it and you go, oh God, I can't believe how did we survive, or whatever whatever the case might be. But yeah, hopefully some of you have found that interesting enough, going through kind of sort of stories from our different campaigns and things, rather than things to take and expand for running games or when you're playing or designing a character or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because really for us, it's I think we'll definitely do another one of these, because there's quite a. I mean, when as we were speaking, there was more and more that was just like down through my head, So because there's quite a lot. There's actually a lot of worse ones. I gave you one of my worst alien ones, but God, the cult one was so bad because it was so prolonged and it was so the content of it was it was brutal, but actually it ended up being such a great. They all survived, but it was it was so just like teeth gritting material. I thought one of the players' fillings was going to crack out because they were talking about their bad teeth at that point. But anyway, I think that's really it from me then. So I think the last thing to really say is just about the socials.
Yeah. So again, thanks for listening or watching. If you've made it this far, if you're on YouTube, giving us a thumbs up is ideal, leaving a comment as well. If there's anything that you want to hear us talking about from our campaigns, again, let us know in YouTube, the comments underneath. There's Twitter, there's Discord, there's Facebook, again there's Instagram. So
yeah, even if you want to hear more anecdotes and stuff like that as well, even if it's just close call experiences, or even if there's topics that we've actually spoke about and you would want to hear more of, like, where did some of this stuff come from, what about your games, have you ever run high fantasy games or medieval based games, we'd like to hear some of the anecdotes about them if you've ran them. Like, we're more than happy to recount some of the stuff we've got, even if it's just nothing but pure ideas to give you. More than happy for it.
Jordan's top 5 longest combats, anything like this, anything like that.
That's not happening. Top 5 longest combats.
Would that be your bottom 5 longest combats? I'm not sure how that would work.
Just for the record, long combat, I don't totally hate it. I don't personally like running it. Most games that I've played that there's been full night combats generally get pretty boring. But then that's just me. Some people live for that, and I come from a Cthulhu background, where combat's like a quarter of the time, if even that, But anyway, we could give you a lot of Cthulhu anecdotes anyway. But cool. So I guess that's that. So thanks again for listening and watching, I should say. So it's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
See ya.